definitely feel free to do that, because it discusses kind of the main overarching different types of taxes that our societies and our governments use today. So what we really want to look at right now is the reason why we have those. So one of those reasons are to pay for services that may not automatically be funded, right? So that can be things like schools or healthcare, military, infrastructure, environment, government institutions, right? Those are all things that don't necessarily have a capitalist value, right? A market capitalist value. So you wouldn't automatically, like, unless you were talking about things that are privatized versions of those, right? So obviously there are private healthcare, there's private schools, military, right? Environmental regulations, even potentially you could have a private versions of those. But they don't necessarily scale the way that ideally a society would want to have them in comparison to when a government oversees those things. And I'm not trying to say that governments are perfect in their spending with those kind of budgets. But to create a system that helps the most amount of people, normally the government would be the best kind of organization, I guess. Yeah, institution to implement those things, especially I think when it comes to infrastructure, right? There's lots of things like, I don't know, the like street lights or like traffic lights, right? Something like that is paid for by taxes. And the reality is none of us, or there's probably it's very unlikely that a company is going to come along and kind of build traffic lights, right?
Be that generous,
yeah, because there's not a direct economic value
for
that
them
they
to
can
do
receive for doing that, right?
Correct, yeah. Whereas the
Yeah.
government can employ people to maintain it, and then those
Mm-hmm.
people are then in turn paid from collecting taxes.
Yeah, right. Because like obviously it still is providing jobs, and someone is still making money off of it. You're buying the parts to do those things, but the end result of having that traffic light, really, unless we were on like a toll road type of thing, which you could make the argument is a tax in itself,
Yeah.
you're really you're not going to have too many people signing up to implement those things within society, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of like our first point for why we have taxes today. Our second point is arguably one of the bigger points, but also I think one of the points that I think the vast majority of us think about when it comes to taxes, and that's the idea of redistributing wealth between economic classes, right? So this is the idea that you're kind of taking wealth from the like upper and middle class and trying to redistribute it to the bottom, right?
Yeah.
So that's in particular kind of connected with our like kind of social services and things like that. Different aid packages that governments put out. All those things are kind of connected with this idea of how do we make things a little bit more fair, or maybe not even fair, but how do we support the people that are
Accessible,
struggling
yeah.
the most? Yeah. Right. And yeah, so redistribution of wealth it's connected to probably all parts of taxes. But I think for a lot of us, when we think of our taxes, we think about this idea of, how can we fund our
like day to day.
Yeah, well,
Oh,
because
you're
like,
you're thinking of okay. Like I'm thinking of infrastructure. So like,
well, no. So I was going to say, kind of connected with that, right? Like,
Yeah.
so if you had a private school, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, if schools were all private, which they are in some places, um, you will have to pay into that system. If you can't pay into that
You don't
system,
get access to it. Yeah.
then you wouldn't get access to it, right?
Yeah.
So this idea of redistributing wealth so that someone who can't afford healthcare, can't afford education, can't afford whatever, you're taking it ideally from those who have and giving it to those who have not, right? Like that don't have that ability. Um, Hopefully that makes sense. It's pretty common sense, but I know I probably convoluted it way
No,
way
no,
more
but
than
like
it needed to
when
be.
you look at like the history of like if you go back to like this would be 13th century England, where like most of our like modern taxes kind of came from, I guess.
Yep. Yep.
Like it was a very much like a I don't want to say barter system, but it was very much like a you provide this, I provide this kind of deal. So it's like
Yeah, the
all the
give and take
villagers
kind of thing,
would
right?
collect their harvest, they would sell all their stuff, and then they pay a certain amount to the local lord, and then he would then in turn protect them from it might not even be things like other people, it could just be like
From the
700 years
Lord
ago, like
itself. Yeah.
yeah, or like wolves.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
just stuff like
Just
that.
the
It's like, okay,
environment. Yeah.
well then, yeah, we'll provide, like, we'll bring in dogs and guys that walk around the village at night, and then
Mhm.
you don't worry about like wolves dragging your like sheep and stuff that then affects the rest of the village.
Yeah.
Now,
No,
obviously, it's
definitely.
evolved since then to be a little bit more than that. But like you said, now we have things like civil services that and infrastructure that take a little bit to upkeep. Like in terms of the population, you have
Mhm.
just something simple as water treatment, for instance, right?
Yeah.
Is a big one,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, where it in itself does not provide like the end result doesn't have anything that you can kind of sell back to society type of
well,
thing.
yeah, and where we live, because yeah, you've been to Hamilton, so like
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
like you go through there and you're like, oh yeah, we pay all this taxes. You guys think you can like air a Febreze out over the water
Mhm.
treatment plant?
Yeah. Tidy up a
Well,
bit.
I think it was what last year at some point, and they realized that there was that sewage pipe leaking into Hamilton Harbor.
Yeah, I did hear something about that.
Yeah. And like I just thought it was funny because I'm like, wait, you guys haven't smelt that for the last 20 years
Yeah.
driving over like this? Like I felt like we all knew.
Yeah.
Like
I think we all knew it was just
there's
the fact
something
that
weird going
like
on. Yeah.
yeah, the accepting that like oh, well there's so many things that are already messed up. Like
Yeah.
it can't be that.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no way. Yeah.
But yeah, nevertheless, that's kind of like in a bit of a hopefully a nutshell. The redistributing of wealth is our second overarching point, and kind of our third. And I do want to preface there are other reasons for why we have taxes besides the three that we're going to name today. But these were kind of three that we thought were important enough and kind of covered the basis for a lot of the reasons.
That we all have
And
some kind of, I guess, interaction with on somewhat of a daily
yeah,
basis,
yeah,
right?
the
Yeah.
vast majority of us have that connection, right? And so yeah, our kind of point number three is used to is that taxes are used to deter certain purchases or behaviors, right? So there are taxes on like cigarettes that are special, right? Or we have nowadays the big like one that everyone talks about is the carbon tax, right? Like a gas
Yeah,
tax.
there's Freon's another one too, and refrigerant.
Yep. Yeah. So
Because they
different
change it so often
environmental
that yeah,
taxes.
once
Yeah.
they're like, oh, here's a new better one, and if you're still using the old one, you pay more of a tax for using it after a
Yeah.
certain point. So it's like
Yeah.
you have until this date, and then if you're still carrying after that date, and you need to like say the system you're running still needs that one, then you have to pay more to get it.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah. So kind of environmental taxes as a whole, because I'm sure there's even others besides the two that we just mentioned there. Um,
oh,
Foreign goods, right? Like, so obviously we talked about this in the last episode, but the idea of tariffs, but even just like importing taxes as a whole, right? Like it could be
yeah,
on specialized goods or
yeah.
goods that we sell here that we don't want you to buy from outside? Sorry, what were you going to say, Jordan?
No. Just extreme example of that would be like
Yep.
exotic pets in parts of the States.
Sure. Yeah, I'm sure that there's like taxes on things like
Yeah,
that.
because like I know like there's like so many tigers in captivity in Texas, and it's
Yeah.
because like in
Yeah.
that state you pay a lower like exotic pet tax or something like that, right?
Okay. There you
Yeah.
go.
Which is kind of so there's just tigers.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure that's really safe, right? Oh man. Um, we've all seen Tiger Kings.